Hey, so this is the first time I'm doing Facebook Live from my computer, and I think I'll be able to see the comments, but I have to see how this goes. I got a question the other day during a video that I was doing with John Wineland about, I think the question literally was, what about feminine integrity? And so I'm not entirely sure what this woman was, like what her real question was, but this is my response to the way that I heard the question. And I'd say I'm also, I'm a little thrown off because on the computer it flips me. So it's like anyway, I'm having a little bit of a hard time with the image here. So my first response, honestly, to the question, what about feminine integrity, was I wanted to say it doesn't exist. And I thought, oh my God, you can't say that. Like, people will crucify you. But here's what I mean by that, is that the idea of feminine integrity as anything that we tend to think of culturally as integrity, I don't believe that that exists. Feminine integrity means, here's what I see as the way that we generally think of integrity, is we think of doing what we say we're going to do. And if we are truly in our feminine, and this is a man or a woman, so this is the place when I say I don't believe feminine integrity exists, I'm not saying women can't have integrity. Let's be clear about this. But if any person is truly in their feminine in that moment, then what is in integrity for that person is to do what feels really good. So that may or may not be the thing that you said you were going to do. And the tricky piece about this is that part of the reason that most people won't be quote unquote in integrity if they're truly in their feminine is that I would say probably 90% of the people on the planet have a really shallow experience of what feeling good means. So when I say that if you're truly in your feminine, to be in integrity means doing what feels good in the moment, 90% of the humans on the planet have an incredibly shallow experience or capacity to feel what truly feels good in the moment. So most of that is going to be around, like, what's going to make me feel good in the moment? What do I want right now? Like, do I want chocolate? I just came from sitting at a cafe, drinking a chai and catching up on little bits and pieces. I said I was going to do a Facebook Live at 11:30. I was about 5 minutes late anyway. But at the shallow level would have felt good in the moment was ordering a second chai and like staying at the cafe and just puttering around. But there's a deeper sense of what feels good. But again, what I actually switched into, there's ways that it's connected to my feminine, but truly what I did was I harnessed my masculine, which is the part of me that's willing to say, I'm going to do what I say I'm going to do. There's something beyond what feels good in this moment that I am committed to. So I'm going to speak to that first, which is so John is saying integrity is neither, he says integrity is neither feline or masculine. Integrity is definitely not feline. Anyone who's ever owned a cat knows that. What I think he means is integrity is neither feminine or masculine. And on one level, I'm going to get to the deeper part where I agree with that, but I disagree, which is basically what I'm saying here. So what I love about a lot of the work that's coming into the world right now that's really encouraging, especially women, to tap into their feminine, to tap into, what some people might call their feminine genius, or a feminine way of working, a feminine way of doing business in the world. What I love about that is that it is bringing this into the awareness, and it's beginning to bring pieces of valuing the feminine into the into our vernacular and into the cultural conscious. And there's tons and tons of beautiful work on this that I completely love, and much of it that I am aligned with. What I don't like about it, I would say, is two things. One is there's a way in which I think it's bullshit, and that a lot of what is being called feminine is actually the masculine repackaged. And so rather than simply saying, hey, men and women both have masculine and feminine, and for men to truly embody their full masculine and their full feminine is so important. And for women to fully embody their full feminine and their full masculine is so important. Instead of really honoring both parts in all humans, there's sort of this new wave that I'm seeing, which is like, women, there's a feminine way to do everything, and you can live in your feminine all the time, and that's the best way, is what it seems like a lot of people are saying. Maybe if we sat down, I'd find out that wasn't at the core of what they're saying. But if that is, again, I disagree. I've actually heard a number of women close to me at different times say, I want to live in my feminine all the time. And I literally want to scream when I hear that. I'm like, no, I don't think you do. And I think you'll drive the people around you crazy if you do. So the other piece of what I don't really like about it is that I believe that it actually it's actually another way of not really honoring the feminine. It's like saying the feminine. What did I read recently? Ambition is feminine, and I thought, I don't think so. Ambition can be sexy. A woman can be ambitious and still be a feminine woman. A woman can be ambitious and still be totally sexy and attractive and desirable. But I don't personally believe ambition is feminine. Hey, Nathan. Thanks for saying hi. And Gerald also says masculine and feminine are outer appearances. I disagree. I would say men and women, and I mean, that's not even outer appearances either, but I would say the masculine and feminine actually is incredibly deep within each of us and all people. So anyway, back to this piece is there's a way that it seems like people are needing to make all aspects of women feminine. And I fundamentally disagree with that. I am a woman, in case it's not obvious, but just clear that up. I have a lot of feminine attributes, and I've, have a lot of range in my feminine, but I also have a lot of masculine attributes, and I have a lot of range in my masculine, and it is my capacity to weave the two and to really dance on both sides and even moment to moment find the way that they dance together, the way that my masculine supports my feminine, and the way that my feminine nourishes my masculine. That is what makes my life work. It's what's really driven my success in the last several years. It's what makes my family really work. it's just a beautiful thing. And I'm kind of like, I guess this is a bit of a rant. I'm a little frustrated by this idea that, again, it seems sort of subtle. Like, I think if I sat down and asked someone, should women only be feminine? Should men only be masculine? They probably would say no, but I hear a lot of this teaching that points to that. And so rather than trying to speak to feminine integrity, which I will actually bring in at the end, I think it's pretty high level practice, but I do want to touch on it. Rather than speaking to feminine integrity, I'd rather say, hey, it's okay as a woman to use your masculine in service of your integrity, and to like really expand your range in terms of your feminine and your flow and your feeling and your pleasure and your expression, and still to be able to contact the parts of you that you're the masculine. It's not even the parts of you that are masculine, but to be able to draw on your masculine in any moment to actually get shit done in the world. And it doesn't even mean you have to shut off your feminine. It's just knowing that you have both capacities. I do want to touch on something John said at the very beginning. Oh, maybe he didn't say it, but it reminded me, which is, I also see integrity as two sides. One is that you do what you say you're going to do. The other is that you say what you will actually do. And that, I would actually say it weaves both the feminine and the masculine together, which is that it takes actually a very subtle feeling practice. What can I truly do? And then it puts some masculine structure around it. Okay, here's what I'm going to say yes to. Here's what I'm going to say no to. And it allows them to weave together. So, I want to see what Linda, I love what you're saying. Yeah, I'm going to touch on that, Linda, a little bit towards the end, because this is the place where it gets really, I think, deep. So let me touch on that at the end. Yeah, the masculine being the vessel or the structure, exactly, and then the feminine is the fluidity. So again, inside of it, I totally agree. I don't know if you say your name Ali or Ali, but that there's this sense that if within myself I actually don't have enough structure, then I'm kind of all over the place. And frankly, this is why I have that desire to scream when I hear women around me say, I want to live in my feminine all the time. And I think, like, you're going to drive the people around you crazy. Because if you, as a woman, probably as a man too, but I'm going to talk to women here for a minute. As a woman, if you are unwilling or incapable of finding any structure inside yourself or holding yourself, not necessarily like, okay, I'm going to be contained and I'm over here, and but like, oh, I have enough facility with my masculine structure that I am not consciously or unconsciously expecting and asking the people around me to hold all of my flow all of the time. And to live in your feminine all the time, that is what you're asking. Again, whether it's conscious or unconscious, if you refuse to hold your own masculine at times or in ways, you are basically asking everyone around you to hold it for you. And while your feminine expression and the energy that you can give, the feminine expression that you can give, and all of these pieces, and the truly your feminine's capacity, and then this is a man or a woman, the feminine capacity inside a human to feel pleasure or to feel at all and to express it is a gift. But if you don't have any capacity also to hold yourself, it doesn't become a gift. If you haven't created that agreement with all of the people in your life that they are going to hold all of the masculine for you, then it's not a gift. You're basically taking advantage of their masculine because they have to. If you can't do that at all for yourself, the people around you will have to. Whether it's your lover, your partner, even your children. As a parent, if you can't hold your emotions in some way, if you can't, again, like hold your integrity, you will be asking the people in your life to hold that for you. So let me just check in here. Hey, Monique, so nice to see your face. Yes. Yes, exactly, Nathan. I'm not actually sure what you mean by to take advantage, whether you're taking advantage of the people around you. So I do want to touch a little bit on this idea because I'm seeing this word come up a lot, which is balance. And I'm a little wary, to be honest. So this is turning into like all my rants about masculine and feminine. I'm a little wary of the word balance when it comes to masculine and feminine. Because again, in my experience, what people mean effectively, they may not mean this consciously, but what I see this mean for people effectively is not much of each. They mean like, great, I'm going to find my way kind of here on like the center zone, and I won't be too feminine, that'll like freak people out, but I won't be too masculine because that freaks people out in a different way. So I see this in both men and women, where there's sort of a, rather than an expansion, when we say balance, what happens is that I mostly see a contraction and people trying to live in this very narrow band. What I would prefer is what I would call expanding your range. And so you may not find that you're actually balanced. Like, I think that I fall more to the feminine side than to the masculine, but I have very strong masculine capacity. Some of that is innate in me and some of it is cultivated. And due to, a lot of cultural conditioning and fear, and I think that this is true for most women, what I have is actually a very innate feminine capacity, but I have had to cultivate it in my life because I was so afraid of it, and because our culture at large is really afraid of the feminine. It's afraid of the feminine in men. It's afraid of the feminine in women. Our culture is very afraid of the feminine. And so it's taken conscious cultivation for me to expand my range, even though I have a lot of very innate capacity. So, and then there's people who fall more to the masculine side. I know very few people, I do know some, but I know very few people who are truly more in this kind of middle neutral area. And I know very few people, again, although I do know some, who I would say have very wide range in the masculine and the feminine, but it's balanced. It's just like a lot in the masculine and a lot in the feminine. I know a few. Most people, I would say, innately fall at least a little bit more to one side or the other. I was still, even for those people, like really for all people, this is my wish. And maybe it's just selfish, but I see people be, I don't know if happier is the right word, but more fulfilled when they're given the opportunity and the training to do this. What I would truly love is to see all people expand much, much farther and deeper into their feminine, and much, much farther and deeper into their masculine, and find their deepest capacities on both ends of the spectrum. And the people who I know who have truly done that are the people who have the biggest capacity to truly flow on all sides and parts of that. And this is where I see people being able to truly, what I might call, make art or meet the moment in the deepest, fullest way possible. because each moment will call for something. And if we have, as humans, truly experienced the spectrum on all sides and in the middle and at its highest and its lowest, then our capacity to actually meet whatever this moment is calling for is much greater. Not only because we have the tools, but also because we're less afraid to bring forth what is being called for in this moment. If I haven't expanded way out here and found, oh, I can do that, I'm still alive, I haven't been kicked out of the tribe, then when the moment calls for this, I'm less afraid. It doesn't necessarily mean I'm fearless or I have no fear, but I'm less afraid. I'm like, oh, I can bring that. An example, like a personal example that I would give was in a workshop that I was leading about a month ago now. And I was called in the span of about 30 minutes. And I'm just going to give these specific examples. There was a lot more also, but I was called in terms of like meeting the moment, the person who was in front of me, and what was going to serve. I was called to bring maybe the fullest expression of like my feminine ferocity, like the goddess Kali, and just bring it forward truly in the moment that I've ever needed to do before for a specific person, and just like give them the full force of that. And then called to bring, and then called to expand, I would say simultaneously actually, both my feminine and my masculine capacity to truly hold a room, which is a very masculine capacity, but at the same time to feel the room, which is a very feminine capacity. So I had needed to do both very, very strongly in a moment. And then not 5 minutes later to drop into this incredibly deep space of surrender and offering devotion. And to be able to do that all in the span of half an hour, it takes a lot of capacity. It takes flexibility. It takes having found that range in myself in the past. It takes having touched on these parts so that I even have them to draw from. So this is my desire in terms of expanding range within human beings. So let me just check if there's any other comments or questions. So I want to come back to this final piece. You asked the question, Linda, and it's where I wanted to close with anyway, which is the piece that I would actually call feminine integrity. And there's a way, or there are moments, maybe is the best way to say it. Like I was just speaking to this idea of what does life ask from us in each moment? And there are absolutely moments, many of them in life, where being able to tap into what I would call feminine integrity, which I might use the word devotion instead of integrity, is almost, it's what I would call a higher level or a deeper level of integrity than what masculine integrity is. Because masculine integrity, when you're truly connected to that masculine inside yourself, will do what you've said you were going to do. It's that place of commitment. And I do believe that your commitment can be to something longer or deeper than what you said you would do in a moment and still be your masculine integrity. But often what that actually calls for is what I would call a very, very deep feminine integrity. Maybe it's just the human language that's like challenged with this deep place of feminine devotion that comes from our capacity to feel way, 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 way beyond, way past what feels good, like the surface level of what feels good in this moment. And then even beyond that is like my fears around how people will respond to me if I break my commitment, or if I do this thing or not that thing, like the ways people will respond to me. And there's all these layers, you know, my own shame, my personal history, back and back and back and back and back. And then there's this very deep place, which I think is a feminine place and a feeling place that is a knowing of what, when I said at the beginning, what feels good in this moment, at the very, very deepest place, the capacity to touch into what feels good in this moment and choose that beyond all these other pieces that I just talked about is deep, deep devotion. And that's the piece that I would say is differentiating between our shallow experience of what feels good and this deep, to me, it's even deeper than what most of us mean when we say intuition. But intuition is a good word for it. Being able to touch into what am I most deeply devoted to is another way to talk about it. And then make a choice in that moment to serve from that deep of a place. So using the example of the workshop that I was leading, and for instance, being called to bring that feminine ferocity, the ferocious expression of the feminine in the moment, did that feel good? No. Did I like doing it? No. Was I, if I had stopped to think for a moment, would I have been afraid how this person might respond or whether they were going to like me? Absolutely. Did I, there's like back and back and back. And then there was this deep, deep commitment and devotion that I had to serving in that moment that, and that allowed me to show up in that way. And that was making a choice from a much, much deeper place than what feels good in the moment. So I hope that speaks a little bit to what you're talking about, Linda. And in closing, this is always my challenging piece. I have a lot to say. That's kind of hard to wrap up in a neat little bow. In closing, I think what I'd like to say is I really wanted to make this because I have been really frustrated about what I see as almost it's like a new way of co-opting feminine and taking things that I think are actually masculine, which is fine. Like, harness those masculine tendencies in yourself, or your capacities, not even tendencies, but your actual masculine capacities. Harness them in service of your feminine, in service of life, in service of your mission. Harness them and actually train in how to cultivate your masculine capacities so that you can bring them in their most beautiful and authentic and healthy way possible. Like do practices that mature your masculine, because then you can use that part of you. And at the same time, do the same for your feminine. You don't have to say that things that are masculine are feminine for them to be good, or that things that are masculine or that are feminine or masculine. Like, we don't have to swap them out for men and women to be able to do both beautifully and with integrity and art. So I think I will probably make another Facebook Live sometime soon about what it actually means to cultivate those parts of ourselves, because it really does take something. We are not trained in this way, and I think I said earlier, the culture is really deeply, deeply afraid of the feminine. And I believe that it's actually very deeply, deeply afraid of the healthy masculine as well, or masculine in general, but that to draw out to the ends on either end of the spectrum is actually very vulnerable, and and that our culture at large is very scared of both. So continue to bring questions or comments into the comments section here. I'll try to respond as best as I can. I'm totally fine if you disagree with me, and I'd love to be poked and dive deeper into this. These are my experiences and where I've come to from my own practices and working with people for about 15 years now. But by all means, disagree with me. Tell me you have a different opinion and why, or a different experience and why, and like, let's tussle about it. And what I love most is when you bring your questions that are specific to your life. How do I bring this into my specific, this specific area of my life? How can I practice this? I have a challenge in this area or this relationship. Those are my favorite questions. And the more specific you make it, the better I think that I'm able to respond. Let me just see what John said here. I have a thought about what feels necessary. I don't understand the question. So if you're here, I have another couple minutes. If you want to clarify about what feels necessary, then I will do my best to respond to it. And I'll just double check up top. And see if there's anything else in here. Well, John, Michael Davis, if in the next few days you clarify on that question, then I will come back in and see if I can respond to it. Thanks for those of you who watched live or the replay, and I will see you all soon. Ciao.